Hello, today I'm going to talk about the effects that the current health crisis is likely to have on the motorhome industry. Now, a number of people have written to me and asked me what I think. Now, I would say that in this case it's not really a question to a full-time motorhomer, but more to somebody who knows a little bit about business, but here you're in luck because I was the publisher of a business magazine. I was a columnist in the leading financial daily in Poland. I used to write reports for a bank, so I have a vague idea of business trends. Now, as far as motorhomes are concerned, there are no major producers currently building vehicles. There may be smaller producers, family-owned concerns which are putting vehicles out or continue to work on vehicles rather than putting them out. They could be 4 or 5 people working there, and maybe they're producing 1 or 2 vehicles a month. But even 2, if you only got 5 people, would be quite an achievement. So they may be still in action, but most companies aren't. And obviously the shutdown's the first thing, but the biggest problem, incidentally, had started earlier because they were unable to source the parts, and the biggest single part they can't get a hold of is the base vehicle. Fiat Ducato, which makes up around 70% of all European base vehicles, it has been unavailable for quite some time because the factories in Italy were closed. Now, so what does this mean if you've actually ordered a vehicle from a main producer? Well, the first thing is that you may have had a long waiting time in any case. Most vans you'd have to wait from 9 months to a year. If the shutdown is 3 months, does this mean to say that instead of waiting 9 months, you're going to wait a year? The answer is that isn't how it works. What will happen is you cannot just close a factory that produces Fiat Ducatos down and then think the very next day or from opening it it's going to be producing at the same rate. It can't do that. It's not possible. There's so many things that need to be put into motion to get it to running as it was running earlier. So that's the number one thing. The second thing, there will be the knock-on effect of the inability or unavailability, I should say, of staff for these places. So that's all going to go into the system. The next thing is that Fiat don't just produce vehicles for motorhomes, they produce them for other uses, and it could be that motorhome producers are deprioritized. So instead of waiting for, let's say, from 9 months plus 3, 1 year, 12 months, you may end up waiting 18 months for a new vehicle. What effect will it have on prices? In my opinion, and I don't know, I'm just guessing now, but I would assume that the price level that it was at the beginning of 2020 will continue. So there'll be no difference up or down on prices. But bear in mind, and I know I keep repeating the same thing, the price of a motorhome is very difficult to say. There is a price list, there's all sorts of equipment, and there's all sorts of combinations to that. So in general, it's very difficult to say anyway. Now, what about used vehicles? And this is what affects most of you. Most of you think of buying a used vehicle, and this is a little bit more complicated for 2 reasons. So there's 2 things that are going to happen. Right, now, after an event of this nature, when people are suddenly very frightened as to what might happen, they understand that life has a beginning and an end, and they start thinking about the things they would like to have done or to do in their lives. And many people have this dream of wandering the roads free in a motorhome. So, and certainly I can say, even in my own case, I live in a van. I've decided, no, I'm going to spend a few months really genuinely traveling around rather than trying to keep going back to do work. So I'm going to do that. So that would theoretically add pressure to prices. But there's something else we need to consider, and this is a very important point. Now, for the overwhelming bulk of people in the world, this is not only a humanitarian crisis, but it is going to be an economic crisis, and that economic crisis will last for many years. So we will see a downturn in the economy. The economies depend on demand for certain products, and many people may decide that some of those products are surplus to requirement. Now, you may think that motorhomes are surplus to requirement, but not within the demographic. But there could be other luxury items, or not even so much luxury, but items where people sort of downgrade. Now, what will happen is that people who have bought motorhomes and are paying for them on credit may decide that they have to offload these vehicles. And I believe, therefore, that a lot of vehicles which are recently bought, for which money is still being paid, particularly on younger people, people who own businesses, people who might want to put their kids through school or something of that nature, these vehicles will come on the market, and that is likely to happen at the end of the summer. I think many people will think, well, let's use the vehicle for one last go, and then we'll have, regretfully, we'll have to sell it, or we'll have to downgrade. So I believe that it's a mid-range type, not the supremely luxurious. People who own the luxury, so the Morellos, the Concords, and things of this nature, they will stay with their vehicles. But it's the people who own the, shall we say, the mid-range Heimers. These are the new ones. These are the people who are more likely to sell it. Normally, when you have a crisis at the bottom end of any product range, there is more demand. For example, you will see that Tesco's own brand will suddenly start selling more coffee, for example, whereas Nescafe will sell less. That's because people go down in market, whereas the very top end of the range, like for example Sainsbury's, Taste the Difference in the UK, or that will maintain its market share. So the very highest end stays where it is. The pressure is on the middle, and so therefore what you may see is that people think, well, maybe I can get myself a camper van, or an older camper van, or something like that. So the older vehicles will probably maintain their prices, but where you could find bargains if you're looking for, and you are still cash positive after this disaster, then you may be able to pick up comparatively cheaply vehicles which are better quality, and newer ones, but not top quality. I hope that sort of explains what is going on. There is a difference between this crisis and the economic crash which happened 12 years ago. Then a number of motorhome manufacturers went bankrupt, and they were bought out by banks, or by financial concerns, or something like that. That is less likely to happen now. Right, so I've tried to explain it in as simple terms as I can. One thing I do need to say is that this market, the motorhomes, I think the motorhome segment will not decrease too much. Because of this thing, and people, because of the demographic, they're bought by older people generally over 55 years of age, people in retirement. These people will still be the same age, and whereas their houses may be worth less money, and they certainly will be, but their desire to live while they still can, so to speak, will remain strong. Thanks very much for listening. I don't have an economic channel, and I won't be doing much on economics. This is how I see the situation. On today, April 2020, I might come back and say that was wrong. All the best to everybody. Stay safe, stay isolated, stay at home.